Have you been watching the reaction of some of the more ardent, ignorant, savage Trump supporters? Now that the raid, or actually it wasn't a raid, it was an investigation. It was an attempt to get returned to the U.S. government items that the Orange Vomit stole. But the reaction of some of the more ardent supporters of the Orange Vomit, it's just, well, it is scary, because these are people who have no concept of right and wrong. Wrong is whatever their priests, and they can be religious or political priests, tell them is wrong. And what is right is whatever their priests, political or religious, tell them is right. They have no ability, the MAGA assholes, no ability to take a look at a situation and come to a rational conclusion based on objective evidence, their own eyes, their own ability to separate fact from fiction. They don't have that anymore. That's what happens when you become part of a cult. And again, I would recommend the book by Eric Hoffer entitled The True Believer. You've got to read that book, The True Believer, Eric Hoffer. He was a Jewish longshoreman, for God's sake, in California, I think, probably Long Beach or someplace. But he wrote this book back in the 50s, The True Believer. I think it was the 50s. Read it, The True Believer. It will give you an understanding as well as insight into what is motivating these sick fuckers who consider themselves Trump supporters. The True Believer by Eric Hoffer, Hoffer. I think there's 2 F's in it. It's been a long time since I've read it. But anyway, you have seen, have you not, since Monday's raid, what these brain-dead fuckers have been doing. And once it became public knowledge that the FBI had searched, let's call it the Winter Palace in Mar-a-Lago, Trump has increased his attacks on law enforcement and the law itself. And this is another part of the fear, the gut-churning fear that I have about these MAGA bastards. There are millions of them, yes. There are more rational people than these MAGA bastards, but you don't need very many people. All it took was a crew of about 5 to completely wipe out Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, let's be real here. 40 or 50 million or 60 million out of a population of 330 million Trump supporters, that doesn't give me any comfort at all. And beyond the scum that buy into his lies and deceptions, then you have the establishment, the political establishment that used to be called the Republican establishment, but is now clearly Christian terrorists. They're backing him up, not because they believe him to be innocent. Oh, come on. But because being seen to be persecuted by the federal government under a Democratic president is now a badge of honor for the Christian terrorists. I mean, it really is. Oh, I'm being pursued. Oh, I got house arrest. Oh, I got fined. Oh, I got probation for trying to free the country on January 6th. I'm a hero. I'm like Paul Revere and the colonists who reacted to the British invasion. Jesus Christ. Now, the whole idea of the FBI searching Trump's residence, primarily, and again, I've heard this so many times over the past 3 days, I want to scream if I hear it again. We don't know all the facts. We don't know what was in the warrant. We don't know what the judge heard when he allowed the warrant to be issued. Okay, blah, 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 blah. But we do know that it was at least in part to determine whether these classified documents that Trump took when he was kicked out of Washington were being stored at Mar-a-Lago rather than sent to the National Archives at the end of his term, which is what the law requires. But remember, we're dealing with Trump. This fucking pig doesn't have any respect for any law except Trump law. And that's shit that he makes up because he's an ignorant savage. And his MAGA followers go along with it because they also are ignorant savages, easily manipulated. So, depending on what the FBI found, the orange vomit could be and probably is in violation of the Presidential Records Act. And that was a law that was passed after the Nixon bullshit back in the mid-'70s. And the whole idea behind the Presidential Records Act was to prevent scum like Nixon or Trump from destroying or refusing even to share the documents and records that were accumulated during their presidency once they leave office. Now, God knows that the elements of criminal activity that are going to be readily apparent in Trump documents would be enough to scare the shit out of him and his cat piss son and his cocaine son. That's why Eric pleaded the fifth 500 times in a different case in New York. But like I mentioned during the first part of the podcast, what you testify in this case can be used against you 2 years later in that case. And I'm sure the cat piss son had that made absolutely clear to him. When you get up there, Eric, don't even tell him your name. Just plead the fifth. Okay. Now, Carolyn Fredrickson, she is a senior fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice. She's also a visiting professor of law at Georgetown University. And she had this piece in the New York Times the other day. And she points out that there's little doubt, if any, in my opinion, that the most senior Justice Department officials, in addition, that would be all the way up to Merrick Garland, in addition to the federal judge who granted the search warrant, that they sanctioned the search. They said, yeah, absolutely. Weighing the obvious sensitivity of raiding this orange bastard's property because, he was a former president, or is a former president, and the inevitable political blowback that would happen from these fascist Christian terrorists who are members of the legislative branch of government and from the scum that support him in the street. Of course there's going to be political blowback. We're talking about Trump. We're talking about his followers. They have nothing to do with respecting or accepting the law. Nothing. These are anarchists. These are scum. And I'm sorry, that sounds like a slur on anarchists. I don't mean that. These are fascist anarchists. How about that? So you can only imagine that failure to enforce a violation of the Presidential Records Act by this filthy bastard Trump would mean that that law is no longer enforceable. So the Justice Department had to do this. They had to do it if the idea that we are a nation of laws, not of men, read people, that we are a nation of laws and the law must be respected. If the law is not being enforced, then the law doesn't exist. It's very simple. And it means that the Presidential Records Act would no longer mean shit. It just would mean anything. And a president who treated this republic the way Trump did would get away with it forever. There'd be nothing to get away with because there'd be no law anymore. I think that's crystal clear to people who can still think. Now, the truth is the National Archives had already gotten boxes that the Orange Vomit was storing at his Winter Palace. And they confirmed that those boxes contained classified information, which could have caused damage to national security. But this fucking Trump doesn't care about that. Those are just bargaining chips for him. When he talks with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, this is what Trump uses to get favorable treatment from Putin. He'll tell Lavrov, well, I've got some information here on nuclear codes. Would you like it? Okay, well, this is what you have to give me. Trump is a fucking bum. He is a grifter. He is a criminal. Of course, he would use national security secrets as bargaining chips when he deals with these fascists that he thinks is going to grant him some kind of dispensation and let him run wild. Of course he would. Trump, it's already been proven that this son of a bitch had so little concern for the files that were being accumulated during his toy presidency that routinely he ripped up documents that should have been preserved, even flushing some of them down the White House toilet. Oh, my God. But that's the orange vomit. He is low rent, low class, white trash. That's all he is. That's all he's ever been. In addition to being a very accomplished grifter. So, excuse me, back to Trump's supporters, whether they're in the Congress or in the gutter or on Fox Sewer or any of these other filthy shitholes of fascist propaganda, rather than express concern, these people, about a possible violation of the Presidential Records Act, or rather than even just withholding judgment until more information becomes available. Oh, no. Oh, shit. No. Trump's cult members attacked law enforcement officials from the get-go. I mean, Trump had just let the world know. He's the one that let the world know. They've invaded my home. They've even opened my safe. Oh, fuck. Look what they're doing to me. As soon as Trump let that out and immediately turned it into a fundraising ploy, his cult followers were in the streets and threatening on social media, open warfare, guns, bullets, guns, people dead, blood in the street, immediately. And immediately after that raid became publicly known, thanks to the orange vomit, Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader in the House, promised that Republicans are going to go after Department of Justice officials when the Christian Fascist Party takes over Congress after November. Ta-da! That's when Kevin McCarthy, the terrorist, tweeted this. Quote, Attorney General Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar. End quote. What a disrespectful motherfucker this McCarthy Catholic fucking terrorist really is. I mean, really? The nerve of the son of a bitch saying that to the Attorney General, when Kevin McCarthy is nothing but a suck-ass coward who made his little anti-Trump statement after the riot that tried to overthrow the government and then immediately went down to the Winter Palace and came back just full of suck marks all over his body. Or Trump had the suck marks from what Trump and Kevin McCarthy got involved in. And then all of a sudden, Kevin McCarthy is a big advocate for the orange vomit. My God, these people. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.